Alright, so we're going to be talking about HTML in this video. I assume that you've already read either the Ducket book or another text, so I'm not going to be going over things like individual elements, but what I'm going to focus on in this video is more best practices for writing HTML. So how to do it well. So the first thing is that HTML has it has a lot of parts, right? So an HTML file has this head that has all this data about the like what kind of HTML you're writing and what the description of their page is, and that's kind of complicated HTML. And I'll never ask you to write that in a class. And also, if you're working as a professional web developer, you're never going to write that for yourself either. We're always going to start with a template, something that we're going to change. So I'll either give you that for the class, or professional web developers will either have their own kind of starting templates or use something off the web. So one that you might use is called HTML5 boilerplate. This has been around a long time, and it sets you up pretty nicely. So if I want to start a site, I'll come here and I'll just download HTML5 boilerplate. You don't necessarily need to do this in the class. I'll give you templates to start with that are a little simpler, but I just want to show you how to do this. So if I download this, I'm going to have my file, and remember from our video on file management, I want to immediately move this into, say, my folder for the class, and I want to rename this folder so that it makes sense. Let's say I'm working on project 1, and this folder is now project 1, and these are all my files that are going to be used for project 1. Now, when we're working with HTML, we're going to be working with a text editor. I use Atom, which is a pretty popular one that a lot of people use now. You can use Sublime Text, you can use, there are plenty of options for you. But with most contemporary text editors, all I want to do is take this folder and bring it into the text editor. And it's going to show me my files over here with my folders. And then I'm going to have my nice text editor with color coding and things like this. So here's all of the kind of default stuff, right? So your file, all of your HTML files need to have a head element. Okay, so an element is something that looks like this. It's got an open caret, the name of the element, a closed caret or a closed bracket, and it's got a closing tag. So a nice thing about Atom and other text editors, if I click on this, it's going to underline the closing tag, okay? And I am going to say that all of these tags are inside the head, okay? And I can visually show that they're inside the head by indenting them over like we have here. All right, so these are inside the head, or we would say the head contains these. The head is inside the HTML tag. And if we scroll down, we can see that the HTML tag is closed right here, okay? This is all the kind of stuff that I'm not going to ask you to write. This is why we start with a template like this. And this is my index.html file, which is my home page. So whenever someone goes to this site, say this site is at project.com, project.com is going to look for the index.html file there, okay? So everything for my page goes inside the body, okay? And I'm going to go ahead and just make some space. So one thing to know about HTML is spaces don't matter, okay? We just use them visually to show us what, like to separate things. Okay, so I can do this and I can start writing my code here, okay? So when I'm typing HTML, let's say I want to put in a paragraph. I'm going to type my opening tag, okay? And I'm going to go ahead and immediately type my closing tag. All right, because anytime I have an open tag, I also want a closing tag, and then I can put in the content of that tag, okay? So for most of our tags, there's a paragraph, right? And the paragraph has content. The content is what's going to appear on the screen. So here's my opening paragraph tag, okay? This is the name of the tag, P. Here's my closing paragraph tag. And I know it's a closing tag because it has this slash here, okay? Same thing if I want to put an H1. So H1 is a top level heading. So H1, let's call this my page. And I'll close my H1. Now, when this gets a little bit more important is, let's say we want to have an unordered list. So an unordered list is a UL, okay? And I'm going to immediately type my closing UL tag. And the reason that's important is because lists have list items inside them, okay? So here's my list item, and let's say I'm making a grocery list and I want to buy apples and oranges. So the reason that I type my closing tags immediately as I type my opening tags is if I don't do that, and if I just type it in order, I might do this and I might forget to close my UL, and I might just start typing whatever comes next in H3. All right, so I'm always going to type my closing tags like this, and I'm always going to end it so I can say, okay, what's inside this UL? Okay, these two LIs are inside this UL, and I can see that visually. Another thing that I'm going to do as I'm typing is I'm going to use comments to help myself remember what's going on and to organize my page, okay? So pages typically have a top section, right, that's the same. It's usually the page title and the menu, right? And we usually call that the header of the page. It's a little confusing because we have a head element right here. But if I come down here and let's say here's my H1 for my page and this is my page header, I'm going to insert a comment here. Okay, so comments start with caret, exclamation point, dash, dash, and they end with dash, dash, caret, okay? And you'll see that it grays this out. And that means that this isn't going to appear anywhere on the page, okay? It's just a note for myself, okay? And like I said, spaces don't matter. Sometimes you'll see people make really big comments like this, okay? So if I'm organizing my page, I might want to do something like this. So I really know what's going on. I've got my page header, and then maybe I have my main content, right? So there's usually a middle section in my page that has my main content. So I'll say here's my main content, and then we've usually got a part of the page at the bottom that we call the footer, and that's where usually we have all of our links again, right? Usually we've got the menu at the top of the page and then the menu at the bottom of the page and copyright information and all of that. So that's just kind of best practice to help me keep things organized. This way, when I come to look at my HTML file, it's not a mess, okay? Sometimes you'll see like this, let's say this. Okay, this will work. This is absolutely fine. The browser can read it. It doesn't make any difference, but the thing is I can't read it, and this is gonna mess you up. So everything on its own line, everything indented like this. So let's talk about one last thing. Let's say I want to put an image here, okay? So an image tag doesn't have content, right? So like this paragraph has content, but it's not like I can put the image right here, right? The image is just a file that we're going to put in. So what we do is we type what's called a self-closing tag. So this tag doesn't have a closing tag. And I can kind of tell myself that it doesn't have a closing tag by putting this slash at the end, okay? So this is a tag by itself. It stands alone. It doesn't have a closing tag. But now we have to tell it, okay, where is the image? And we do that by including an attribute, okay? So we haven't had any attributes yet, but an attribute is information about this tag, and it looks like this. So it's inside our tag, and we say the attribute name, an equal sign, and then inside the quotes we have the value for this attribute. So src or source points to where the image is, okay? And this is something that's going to confuse you, so I'm going to go over it and we'll go over it multiple times, okay? So I need to say where this image is. Now let's say that inside here, let's see, I'm gonna say we've got cat.ping, okay? So cat.ping would be a image file, okay? Images on the web are JPEG, GIF, or PNG. We'll talk about those another time. And I want to include that image right here in my page. What I have to do is give this file directions to this image, okay? And what you're gonna wanna do is type cat.ping, and that's not gonna work. It's not gonna show up on your page. If we go over here, here's where we are. Here's our image folder, and here's cat.ping. So if I say cat.ping, what it does is it says, look right where I am, so in the folder where I am, look in project 1 for a file called cat.ping, and it's going to say, hey, I don't see a folder, or I don't see an image called cat.ping here, right? Because it's in this image folder. And the reason that we use folders like this, like we've talked about, is just to organize our files. If I've got 200 images on my site, I don't want them all here because I'm going to lose everything else. I'm not going to be able to find my HTML files. So I want them all in my image folder, and I need to tell it, okay, go to the image folder, look inside it, and find cat.ping. Okay, so this / means go into a folder. All right, so this is what we call a relative address or a relative URL, okay, and it means it's relative to where I am now. So img/cat.ping means start where I am right now, okay? I'm in index.html, so I'm in this folder, and if you do this column view, it makes it a lot easier for you. Okay, so if I'm giving directions from here, I want to say go into the image folder and find the file called cat.ping. So this is go into the image folder and find the file called cat.ping, all right? If I had a folder called animals here, and cat.ping was in that folder, I would say go into the image folder, go into the animals folder, and find the file called cat.ping, okay? Go into the image folder, go into the animals folder, find the file called cat.ping. All right, so this is an attribute. The other place that you'll use this is, we haven't talked about CSS yet, but a CSS file is going to tell everything how to look, what color to be, how big to be, sizes, all that sort of thing. And this is, again, a relative URL. It's another attribute, right? So this is an href attribute on this link element, and the href is equal to css/main.css. So what that says is start with where I am, okay? So I'm in my index.html file, go to my CSS folder, and find main.css. All right. The other attribute that images get is an alt attribute. So this is for accessibility, mainly for people who maybe can't see, who use the internet without images. It's also for search engines, so that the search engine knows what this is an image of. Okay, so it's an attribute. We say alt, the name of the attribute, equals, and then inside our quotes, we're going to say this is a cat sits on a log in front of a red barn. Okay, so in my alt tag, I want to describe that image, and you don't need to go into huge amounts of detail, but just something so that someone could know, okay, there's a picture of a cat right here, it's this sort of cat, or so that a search engine can know, okay, this is a picture of a cat. One thing that's really important is if you ever have text on your images, which you should really minimize, right? So if in Photoshop or in Illustrator you have text and it's part of your image, that text needs to go here so that someone who can't read can still get the content that you're including on your page. All right, so that's largely what I want to cover for HTML. The really big things that I want to hit on here are using a template to start. and modifying it, right? When we modify it, we're just talking about what's here in the body largely, okay, our content. Organizing our content so that it's not just a jumble, it's not a mess. I can read it, okay? If you can read it, you will make less mistakes, right? So this isn't just about making it pretty, it's about helping you make less mistakes, okay? HTML elements, an opening tag and a closing tag. When I type my opening tag, I immediately type my closing tag so that I don't forget it, okay? These are practices so that you don't make mistakes, so that you write better code. And then attributes. Attributes look like this. They go inside the tag, okay? So we'll learn later about an attribute called class. If I want to put a class on this UL, it goes in the opening tag. There's a space, and then I type the name of the attribute equals quotes, okay? It doesn't look like this, okay? It looks like this. And then I have my class right here. So this is class main. All right, and then indenting, okay? So do not do this. Again, this is to help you not make mistakes, and this will become more and more important as we go on through the semester, so get in the habit now of doing your indents nicely.